Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So in this video I'd like to go over how to Paladin Heal the new dungeon, Vault of Stars. Now it can be rather challenging on a Paladin Healer to proficiently and successfully heal through this dungeon, especially when you're running with newer players that don't really know the mechanics. So if you're going into the dungeon fresh and it's your first time, I highly recommend going with a group who actually know what they're doing. It'll make your life a whole lot easier. And once you are proficient in how to Paladin heal and you know all the tricks of the trade within the new dungeon, then I would say you're probably ready to jump into groups and help people actually learn the dungeon. So initially you start off with just lots of mobs before the first boss, and all things here are pretty simple. You can either use your Divine Shelter to keep people healed as kind of a group. The radius is very nice there at 80 feet, so you'll generally be within range of being able to heal everybody. It's like a decent heal, doesn't cost too much divinity, and it'll heal everybody pretty much equally, well, depending if you crit or not. Now, alternatively, you could use Divine Touch, like I do here. You can use Divine Touch to essentially heal one or two targets, and this heal would be significantly higher than what you would obtain from the Divine Shelter, but the drawback is it's pretty useless when you want to heal everybody together. It's mainly just, for healing one or two targets and no more. Ideally you just heal each person every 20 seconds, give them a decent shield, and that shield should then last them for a certain period of time, because that shield can be quite significant when it's just created through Divine Touch, since it has a nice high magnitude when only healing one person. So we jump into the first boss, and again I run with the same setup of having Divine Touch instead of Divine Shelter, and especially for this boss, and you'll see why. Many of the players like to just run helter-skelter around, and especially because of the division of having some DPS who will kill the mobs and another DPS will be on the boss. And with having this division and also having mechanics which require you to move around a lot, it is quite easy to have people separated and then being able to heal them with Divine Touch rather than Divine Shelter. Now if you're new to all this and you haven't really used Divine Touch much, then I recommend just sticking with Divine Shelter, and you can just spam that when you can. It's just I find you run out of divinity, especially here, a lot more quickly, and it's just not needed to heal everybody. Normally you only need to heal one or two people because they've taken significant amount of hits, let's say from the mobs or from certain mechanics that they didn't avoid, and then you only need to heal one or two people rather than healing everybody, because when you heal everybody and they don't actually need healing, you're wasting divinity. Along with that, Divine Touch is a lot higher magnitude and you'll be able to heal them for a much more significant amount. Alternatively, you can just, use Divine Shelter and then top people up with Cure Wounds. That works too. You could get the Sheltering Light feat instead of the Critical Touch feat. It's a meta and it does work, but for it to really work, you need to have cast the Divine Shelter first so they have the shield, and then you'll use your at-will to top them up. So there's nothing really special with the first boss. Just keep an eye out for the DPS, because they are killing those mobs and it's not that easy for the tank to have the aggro on them, so they will take a significant amount of damage from that. Now once you get the boss to 50% health, this is when you'll have the Displacer Beast will come along, and you need to make sure whenever the Displacer Beast goes and pounces on somebody that you keep them alive. If you do get pounced on, like I did here, you generally have enough hit points to keep yourself alive. But if you make sure everybody's got a full shield from, let's say, Divine Touch or even Divine Shelter should do the job, you'll probably live through it. But DPS might not, since their defensive stats are usually a bit lower along with their hit points. So make sure you're aware of when the Displacer Beast pounces on somebody, and make sure to give them a heal or two. It can be annoying when your group just stacks on top of the guy. That way it's a lot harder to heal them with, let's say, Divine Touch by itself. So just be aware of that and keep on the ball. If need be, you could tell people to clear away, and that way you can keep them healed nice and easily. So that's pretty much it. Then once you've killed the Displacer Beast, you're back onto the main boss again, and you just have mobs and the boss. Make sure to keep that tank alive. He does take a big hit after the two mechanics of the wide red line and the green line from the boss teleporting to the outside, and once the boss comes back to the tank, then he'll get like a tank buster, so make sure to give him a shield there. And just have your Hand of Divinity mark, the Aura of Divinity mark on him, and that way you can easily single target heal him from any range pretty much. It's 120 feet. Generally don't get further away than that from the tank. Keep in mind though, if you do die, the mark will drop off. So that's the first boss. Now we move on to, well, in between the first boss and the second boss, you just have these forests, which you just have to navigate through. I like to use then like Banishment and Burning Light, just for lots of stuns. I'm also using the Storyteller artifact, the frozen one, to make sure it will also stun. It also gives a buff to the DPS, to the party. And then I'm also just using my mount power. I'm just using Cauldron Fumes there, just for the extra accuracy and combat advantage for the DPS to deal more damage nice and quickly there, and we can kill stuff a whole lot faster. If the faster you kill stuff, the less you'll have to heal, because the less damage they'll take. So that's a benefit to you. So we finally go to the second boss. Now the second boss is fairly straightforward. I slot in Divine Shelter here instead of Divine Touch, as generally people are grouped up, and they will need to be for the hypothermia, where you all need to group up and you'll just tank the damage together. Most people are just perfectly fine with this. We all have enough hit points to live through it. Even if you don't have them fully healed up, they generally can still survive. But yeah, just keep that Divine Shelter, keep that barriers up on those guys, and they'll be perfectly fine. Every now and again, when you do get the spread mechanic where everybody gets an AoE under their feet and they have to drop this area, that's when you kind of want to be on the ball as well, to keep people topped up and healed. If one person needs a specific more heal than others, just use a Cure Wounds on them. I know the aiming can be a bit annoying, but it's something to get used to and something you should really get good at, just for the Paladin Healer, as using the at-will to top up somebody is pretty handy. Now that's just the second boss, and we move on. Now you have the maze. In the maze again, I like to switch to Divine Touch, as people are generally spread out and you can give them a spot heal here and there. If they're running away from the people, you generally find when they're on low HP, they will run away from the mobs, and generally everybody else is by the mobs, so they will separate themselves, which is very handy for Divine Touch to just spot heal on them. Of course, you will have to be good at tracking their movements, looking at their bars on the left there to see if anybody's dropping in HP, and you need to find them quick, and you need to drop that heal on them. Make sure in your HUD to have active the allies' health, as that will help out a whole lot, just to make sure you can quickly find them. So that's pretty much it for the maze. You just make your way through, heal as best you can, and proceed on to the final boss. Now with the final boss again, I like to switch to Divine Shelter again, as everybody will be grouped up. Here it should be fairly straightforward. If people are tanky enough, then you'll be just grand, like my party here. Now of course, one or two people will die if they're in the wrong place at the wrong time, let's say in a red area, and they just take too much damage and you can't keep up with healing it. Try and manage your divinity. Don't spam too much, only heal when you really need to. So for the first golem, it's all fairly straightforward. You probably only have to worry about healing the tank. However, when the tank does bring the boss into one of those dark areas, if you have melee DPS, they'll take damage over time, so be aware of that. Then when you go to the second golem, he'll do this like large area of red, and just make sure you position yourself so you're not in the red. It can be annoying sometimes that the red will move and then you'll hit you anyway. If that's the case, you might have to spam your Divine Shelter to try and keep people alive, but if they die due to being in the red, it's really not your fault. Nothing you can do too much to help. Now when you go to the third golem, that is when things start getting dicey. The third golem is where you get these black holes. Now I found on my healer I could just literally just sit in the black hole and be just grand. I have a lot of hit points. I also am running with the Stalwart Lion, which will also help block damage, and I'm running with the negation enchantment. So with my current hit points and defensive stats, I had no problem just sitting in the black hole and spamming my divine shelter, as that's all we can really do. As my secondary encounter powers, I'm just running with Sacred Weapon that will decrease the damage you take and also restore divinity, and also running with the Circle of Divinity that will increase your outgoing healing and also restore divinity over time. So both of those I highly recommend, just to make sure you don't run out of that divinity. Try and not spam it when you don't need to, but you probably will need to spam it when you have, let's say, the hypothermia stacked up with the black hole. That can come really nasty. If you have good DPS, you'll get through the boss in no time at all and you'll be done. Again, if somebody gets caught, let's say, in a black hole which sucks them into a red zone, they'll probably die, and there's nothing you can really do about it, and you can do yourself the best to make sure you also aren't caught within the red zone during a black hole. And that's pretty much it for this dungeon and all I can really tell you for a Paladin Healer. On other healers it's a good bit easier, especially on the Cleric, as they have massive heals compared to the Paladin, but we do have the advantage of giving people a buffer of that divine barriers. It's just a matter of timing of when it's actually worth it to use it. There's no point using another divine shelter when everybody is already shielded and let's say they're only missing a few points of hit points. But with that aside, hopefully this was at least somewhat helpful, especially to you newer paladins out there looking to jump into the end dungeon. It can be quite challenging, again, especially if you have a newer party. So hopefully I presented this well, and if I did, consider leaving the video a like, and if you're new around here, consider subscribing, and we'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.